Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. Hopefully, I can still say that because I didn't get a chance to see you all in January. We will convene the February 15th MCE Board of Directors meeting. Madam Clerk, can you please call roll?
Belvedere. Benicia.
Here.
Concord.
Here.
Contra Costa County.
Here.
Corte Madera.
Here.
Danville.
Here.
El Cerrito.
Here.
Fairfax.
Here.
Fairfield.
Here.
Lafayette.
Here.
Larkspur.
Here. Here.
County of Marin.
Here.
Martinez.
Here.
Mill Valley. Moraga.
Here.
City of Napa.
Here.
Napa County and 4 Napa cities.
Here.
Novato.
Here.
Oakley.
Here.
Pinole.
Here.
Pittsburgh.
Here.
Pleasant Hill.
Here.
Richmond.
Here.
Ross. San Anselmo.
Here.
San Pablo. San Rafael.
Here.
San Rafael.
Yes, here.
San Ramon.
Here.
Sausalito. Solano County.
Yes.
Tiburon. Vallejo.
Here.
Walnut Creek.
Here.
Recording in progress.
Form established.
Thank you. I also want to welcome our new directors to our MCE board. Moving on to the next item is board announcements. Are there any board announcements? Don, are you seeing any announcements in San Rafael?
No, we have no hands here.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to public open time. This is an opportunity for members of the public to make a comment on anything that is not an agenda item. Do we have any members of the public that would like to speak at this time? Seeing none in Concord, any in San Rafael?
None in San Rafael, Chair.
And anything via Zoom?
I see no raised hands, Chair.
All right, thank you. Next item is the CEO report. I will turn this over to you, Don.
Great, thank you so much. And I'm glad you said Happy New Year. It does feel a little late to say that, but we didn't have a meeting in January. So I'm really excited to kick off the year here. And I've got some exciting announcements. The first is I wanted to let folks know that we have seen a lot of success with our CCCFA green bond transactions. And we celebrated a major milestone in December with the successful completion of our second renewable energy prepayment transaction by issuing 1.038 billion, in tax-exempt green bonds through the California Community Choice Financing Authority. That's what the acronym stands for. Hey, Garth. And this move prepaid 5 renewable energy contracts, including contracts for geothermal, solar, and solar plus storage. Garth, you're welcome to hop up here if you want. We're just celebrating some of your great work here. There's been really strong investor demand, and that's allowed us to secure lower interest rates, resulting in an average annual savings of $7 million for our customers through 2030. This is about a 13% savings on the prepaid energy. So really a wonderful outcome, given that, you know, it didn't cost us much to do it, and it's such a big net savings for our customers. So we wanted to pass along that exciting news. And then next, I wanted to let folks know that the San Geronimo Affordable Housing Solar Plus Storage project just got announced. We've got 3 new projects at this location in West Marin, and this was made possible by a collaborative funding led by MCE, along with the Marin Community Foundation grant and a CPUC self-generation incentive grant, or SGIP, as it's typically called. We were able to provide and install 3 batteries at no cost to the Housing Association. So this was in the news lately, and I just want to make sure everyone heard about it. These projects provide backup power during outages, but they also support daily load shifting that reduce energy costs and eases grid strain during peak hours. So we're able to suck up that energy during the middle of the day, put it onto the grid in the evening, and that helps reduce our use of fossil resources that might be on the grid in the evening. So really excited to see that one get completed. And then for those of you who are involved in the Bay Area Air Quality Management District board or have been tracking some of their activities, you may know that around this time last year, there was a really exciting decision made that would reduce the amount of gas appliances being used. And I wanted to let folks know that MCE staff have partnered up with other CCA staff in the Bay Area. And we are meeting with Bay Area Air Quality Management District at the staff level to help them explore ways, strategies really to implement these new rules. And looking at, you know, what are some best practices? We have secured some grant funding to help with a heat pump water heater loaner program. That's a great way to get folks right when they're in that crisis moment and they're about to get a new water heater and they need something to kind of tide them over until they do the research and get the heat pump model. We're sharing our successes with that program and other programs, and we're collaborating in hopes that we'll see a lot of progress on these new initiatives. So feel free to reach out if you want more information on that. We're meeting on about a quarterly basis. And then I wanted to let folks know that we are gearing up for this year's open season in early March. We run an open season this time every year. Bids are usually due right at the beginning of March for power supply. And this time around, we're aiming to secure long-term contracts for renewable energy. We've seen a lot of price volatility for short-term renewable energy lately. And so we're hoping to lock down some of these resources so that we can stabilize prices. The focus is going to be on wind, geothermal, and renewables plus storage. We've streamlined the process to expedite our negotiations. So we're hoping we can bring contracts to an ad hoc contracts committee earlier in the year this year and aim for board approval by the end of the summer. So fingers crossed and stay tuned. We'll have more to come on that. On a parallel track, we're also introducing an ongoing solicitation for renewable projects using a standard form contract to speed up the contracting process. And this would be for more short-term volumes that become available in the market. So we're excited about that. I wanted to let folks know that on the rates front, on January 1st, PG&E implemented a rate increase for electricity and gas by 12.8%. Only the gas portion of MCE customer bills increased, and that averaged about $10.50 a month for an average customer, or $7.25 per month with the CARE discount. Non-MCE customers saw a larger average increase of about $32.62 per month. And then I wanted folks to know that PG&E does plan to increase delivery rates by somewhere between 6 and 7% on March 1st. We know that can change, but that is what they are projecting right now. This would affect all customers with an average impact of $3.50 for a typical residential customer. Despite PG&E's increases, we're really proud to continue providing greener energy services at lower rates. And we think this demonstrates our commitment to sustainability and affordability for our customers. We'll be leaning into that a lot this year. And we aren't going to be bringing any proposal for a rate increase during our budget cycle next month. It looks like we'll be keeping rates stable under the proposed budget. And then last but not least, I wanted to share the excitement that MCE was presented with the Large Business of the Year Award by the Chamber of Commerce in Novato. It was so exciting to receive this award. I just wanted to show off some of the great stuff that we got, a great resolution here. We got on Tuesday night, in addition to the ceremony earlier in the month, they gave us a key to the city. So we're going to use this wisely. And also this wonderful plaque. So thank you so much to Director Wernick and for all the support in Novato and sharing the good stuff that we're doing. It's been a great collaboration. Oh, I think your mic wasn't on. Concord might want to hear that. Can you turn your mic on? Can you turn?
Sorry. I like to say that the key is actually the key to the executive washroom.
Dawn, I don't know if you mentioned this at a previous meeting, but San Ramon awarded MCE the Green Business of the Year Award. And Vicken was there with some other MCE staff to receive the award at our awards banquet.
Oh, absolutely. You know, we bragged about this in December, so I thought about mentioning it tonight, but I thought it might be over bragging if I did that.
It's never over bragging.
Since you brought it up, yeah, might as well talk about it. I think the WOW Awards ceremony was so exciting and just such an honor because I feel like both in San Ramon and Novato, we had a lot of skeptical folks at the beginning, and it's really exciting when we get to collaborate and partner and really make good things happen together, and then there's recognition for it. So it was really an honor to receive that award, and I know Director Perkins, you had a hand in that. So thank you for your efforts there. So that's it for most of my report. The very last thing I wanted to say is that we're going to be trying something a little different with voting tonight. Two things that we're doing a little bit differently with an eye towards streamlining the time spent in meetings. We're going to run through the roll call without calling out names of folks that weren't here at the beginning. But if someone comes in after the initial roll call, we'll add them and call their name after that. We'll also check at the end of the roll call to see if there's anyone that needs to be added. So we think that'll shorten the time of roll call just a little bit. Also, we're going to be putting our roll call tracker, our voting tracker, up on the screen so folks can see the votes being recorded. And if you see anything being recorded different than you heard it, just please let us know. All right. And that is it for my report. Any questions?
Thank you, Don. All right. Are there, seeing no questions from the directors, are there any questions from members of the public? All right, seeing none, we will move on to item number 5, our consent calendar. We'll take a motion for 2 items, C1 and C2.
Move to approve C1 and C2 on the consent calendar.
Motion made by Director Darling, seconded by Director Perkins. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Has anyone arrived recently?
Thank you for asking. We do have the City of Belvedere here now.
Thank you.
That's all since you called roll.
Belvedere?
Yes.
Benicia?
Yes.
Concord?
Yes.
Contra Costa County?
Oh, yes, sorry, yes, sorry, we were muted. Yes.
Thank you. Corte Madera?
Yes.
Corte Madera?
Yes.
Danville?
Yes.
El Cerrito?
Yes.
Fairfax,
Yes.
El Cerrito,
You
Yes.
called El Cerrito.
Yeah. You did twice. Sorry about that.
Gabe gets 2 votes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Lafayette,
Yes.
Larkspur,
Yes.
County of Marin,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Mill Valley, Moraga,
Aye.
City of Napa,
Yes.
County of Napa and 4 Napa cities,
Yes.
Novato,
Yes.
Oakley,
Yes.
Pinole,
Yes.
Pittsburgh,
Yes.
Pleasant Hill,
Yes.
Richmond,
Yes.
San Anselmo,
Yes.
San Rafael,
Yes.
San Ramon,
Yes.
Solano County,
Yes.
Vallejo,
Aye.
Walnut Creek.
Yes.
Is there anyone present whose name was not called?
Arlene, we have Corte Madera. This is Director Beckman. Looks like Corte Madera was mistakenly marked absent, but it was a yes vote.
I'm sorry, what did you say about Corte Madera?
It looked to me like we were mistakenly marked as absent, but I am here and voted yes.
Corte Madera in the House.
Thank you.
Thank you. Quorum established. Motion carries.
Thank you. Well, I like the new voting tracker there on the screen. All right, we'll move on to item number 6. I'd like to introduce the Charles F. McGlashan Advocacy Award. This award was established by MCE in 2011 to recognize those who have demonstrated passion, dedication, and leadership on behalf of MCE. The annual award also honors and commemorates the life and legacy of environmental leadership of founding MCE Chair Charles F. McGlashan. I'll pass it over to Director Painter to present our first winner.
Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, we
good.
can hear
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate you letting me participate and do this remotely. I'm really, truly honored to be presenting this award this evening, and it goes to Chris Benz from Napa Climate Now. And I believe Chris is here with us by Zoom. Is it possible to bring her in, or what's appropriate there? Oh, there she is. Okay. Good evening, Chris, and maybe you'll have your camera on so we can see you as well. Perfect. Um, Good to see you. And I just want to say I've had the pleasure of working with Chris directly on a number of projects supporting sustainability, combating climate change here in Napa County. And Chris is receiving the 2023 McGlashan Advocacy Award for her instrumental role in last year's inaugural Napa Climate Summit and her continued work championing many of MCE's programs. In 2023, Chris organized 6 community events to foster climate action, including an EV showcase, a multifamily property owner resource fair, and Earth Day events, among many, many others. I'd like to thank Chris for her hard work and dedication and formally present her with the 2023 Charles F. McGlashan Advocacy Award. I do have it here with me, Chris. It's in Napa. I don't know if I probably can't see that. At any rate, I have it here and I really look forward to getting it into your hands as soon as possible. I also want to just share a couple of upcoming things that Chris is working on that I'm really thrilled about. And that is our 2024 climate event. It's well underway. It's scheduled for April 27th in the city of Napa. It'll be an open house, but the notion is a Napa Climate Solutions Showcase where we'll make available all kinds of tools and information for residents, renters, homeowners to look at how to create a healthy home, save money, and reduce emissions. Chris has been truly instrumental in doing that, and I want to thank her and also MCE for your sponsorship for that terrific event. And with that, is it okay to turn it over to Chris for a few words?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all. I'm joining you from Portland, Oregon, and I am so honored to receive this award. The inaugural Napa Climate Summit in 2023 was definitely a team effort. It involved members of Napa Climate Now, which is the Napa County 350 Bay Area Group. And it also involved two of our elected officials, including Napa City Council member and MCE Director Painter, and St. Helena City Council member Anna Chateau. It was very exciting for everyone in the audience to hear how many of our local agencies are working on renewable energy infrastructure projects. And we are blessed to have MCE as our CCA inspiring and supporting these projects. Napa Climate Now also works closely with the student leaders of Napa Schools for Climate Action, who are advocating to eliminate fossil fuels and restore the climate. Clean energy will be a very big part of this. And once again, we thank you for your support of that. Thanks so much for this award and for recognizing our efforts.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris, for joining us from Napa Climate Now. And thank you, Director Painter, as well, for introducing the award this evening. Next, I would like to turn it over to Director Joya.
Thank you. I'm over here in El Cerrito with our Mayor of Richmond, Eduardo Martinez. So both of us are here. I'm really honored to recognize a great nonprofit housing developer who we in Contra Costa have partnered with on a number of affordable housing projects, and just want to acknowledge, that whole organization. They do work all over the Bay Area, but specifically, we're acknowledging them for their work electrifying a 91-unit affordable multifamily property in Concord, as well as their participation in MCE's multifamily energy savings program, our low-income families and tenants program, and our strategic energy management program. Their work really does represent what we can achieve when we work together. And they have stepped forward not only in the realm of affordable housing, but also really moving forward on electrification. And we want to especially honor two members of their team, Tom White and Ruthie Levin, who are with Eaton Housing. I think they are in the Concord office, and I always recognize their executive director, Linda Mandolini, and the leadership of this organization in doing this work. So with that, I want to formally present Tom and Ruthie on behalf of Eaton Housing with the 2023 Charles McGlashan Advocacy Award. And again, I think they're in Concord, and if so, they have a chance to say a few words.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here and really appreciate the support of MCE and our electrification efforts. We're bringing heat pump technology to older communities that Eden has acquired. And there are a few of them in the city of Concord, as well as other cities like Martinez, Richmond, Hercules, And we also have acquired a significant portfolio in Solano. So we'll be working with you, I'm sure, on many communities. And I've been ably supported by my assistant project manager, Ruthie Levin, who was included in the press release that you sent out. So we really appreciate the acknowledgement and also the financial support for bringing heat pump technology and more energy efficient, all electric heating and cooling to residents who had to rely on in-unit gas equipment for their space heating and very old air conditioning units that were only limited to one room out of many in their apartments. Ruthie?
It was a very exciting project to work on. It had a bunch of snags, but we're smoothing them out. And it's what gets me up at the end of the day. What gets me excited is when the residents say, oh my goodness, I have heating and cooling in a place that I didn't have before. I now have heating and cooling in my bedroom. And I now am going to have lower energy bills. And they're really happy with what we've installed. And we're very grateful for this programs and programs like this that allow us to support our residents in this way in our existing portfolio. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the acknowledgement and for the award. Happy to meet you all.
I want to thank the Eden Housing team. We appreciate all of your work and passion and dedication, but also thank you for sharing some of the stories from some of the residents as well. Thank you, Director Joya, for introducing the award. Moving on to Director Lawrence Galati. She will be presenting the next award.
Thank you so much, Chair. It is my real pleasure to present the final award tonight to an educator. She's sitting next to me, Karen Maiden. And Karen is a lead teacher for the Marine School of Environmental Leadership, or Marine Cell, which is like a school within a school in Terra Linda, and is here in San Rafael. So we are really, really lucky to have you. In 2023, Karen partnered with MCE to develop a curriculum for 9th grade students focused on renewable energy. Students that participated in this project engaged in climate activism. I had the pleasure to have them speaking to the City of San Rafael Sustainability Commission, and it was so inspiring. They developed an Instagram page with top tips and tricks to make energy efficient choices and encourage their peers, parents, and community, including myself, to adopt renewable energy. So it is my pleasure to present the 2023 Charles F. McLaughlin Advocacy Award to Karen Maiden for her work fostering youth as change agents in our fight against climate change. Thank you so much. Your work is admirable, and you really give us hope. So I have a little award right here.
All right. Hello. Is it working? So thank you. Like all things in life, it's not done in isolation. So last year was my first year being the lead teacher in the Marin School of Environmental Leadership, but I am a lifelong educator. I think I've spanned 27 years in education, so a long time. But first year to the program, and I had 2 daughters go through the program. Our son is currently in the program. Noel had, I think your son, you said, was in the 3rd cohort of Marin Cell, which has been around for about 16 years. It's a really unique partnership between San Rafael City Schools, which we were lucky to have Micah as a board member for many years, and an educational nonprofit called SEI, where Alexis spends her days. So it's a really great partnership that encourages students to be active leaders in their world and to try to solve real world problems. So jumping into this role as lead teacher, I was so lucky that I got to work with Sebastian Kahn from MCE, and he was one of the partners that Marin Cell had already had an established relationship with MCE. So I met Sebastian, and it was so wonderful working with him and Mariella Herrick, and they worked over 2 semesters with different groups of students. And the fact that they chose to spend time volunteering, working with teenagers to teach them about renewable energy, drive to Terra Linda High School, get through the hallways and meet with these students to come up with these campaigns just shows what wonderful people they are. And my students benefited from their leadership and their mentorship. And I'm so thankful that the partnership existed and that I just got to carry it through. And those sophomores that spoke at that committee, they are continuing to learn about renewable energy because now they are focusing on teaching the community about all the great new buildings we have at Terra Linda High School that have a lot of renewable energy and sustainability built into the buildings. And because they had that prior knowledge of working and learning about renewables, they are seeing it in action. And a fantastic experience. So on behalf of the program, because this really is going to the program that I am so lucky to teach, thank you very much for your partnership. And I'm very grateful that I've had the opportunity to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen, and congratulations to all the recipients. And thank you, directors, for helping me out to present the awards this evening. Now we'll move on to a quick photo. That way we could present the Eden Housing Award. And then you all can present to Karen and take a quick photo out there. All right, we will move right along. We are moving on to item number 7. This is an election of the MCE chair and vice chair. This is an action item and will be led by MCE's CEO, Don. But first, we will hear from our general counsel, Catalina Murphy. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, board members. This is the annual vote of our chair and vice chair as described in our operating rules and regulations. So Don's going to be leading the vote this evening by calling out nominations for each of the positions. We'll go through them one by one. And each of the nominations must confirm their willingness to serve. And then once all the nominations and acceptances are in, the board's going to vote in the order of nominations received. So the first person nominated is the first vote that the board will take. And then as a reminder, electing an officer requires a majority vote of the full board. So that is 19 yeses to secure a seat for that position. Dawn, if you're ready, please go ahead.
Yes, I am ready. And I want to make sure folks know that in your packet, there is a list of the current MCE board offices and committee roster. This will be relevant in our next item as well for those of you that might want to join a committee or switch to a new committee. Currently, our chair is Chanel Scales Preston. Our vice chair is Gabe Quinto. And they have both expressed a willingness to stay in their office or in their seat. But at this time, we are able to take nominations. So, and we're going to do them one at a time. So the first office up for election is for the chair of the board. And at this time I can take any nominations. Yeah, we have, yeah, turn on your mic and you can go ahead.
Thank you, Don. I'd like to nominate Chanel Scales Preston for chair.
I'll second.
Okay, and Chanel Scales Preston, we just need to ask if you accept the nomination of chair.
Yes, I accept the nomination of chair.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for the position of chair? Okay, seeing none, is there any public comment on this item?
I see no raised hands online.
Okay. Any raised hands in Concord?
No raised hands in Concord.
Okay, we will now move to a vote. Director Scales Preston was nominated, so we will conduct a vote now to elect her as chair of the MCE board. Darlene, will you please call the roll?
Belvedere.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Benicia.
Yes.
Concord.
Yes.
Contra Costa County.
Yes.
Corte Madera.
Yes.
Danville.
Yes.
El Cerrito.
Yes.
Fairfax.
Yes.
Fairfield.
Yes, absolutely.
Lafayette.
Yes, enthusiastically.
Lafayette. Larkspur.
Yes.
County of Marin.
Yes.
Martinez.
Yes.
Mill Valley. Moraga.
Aye.
City of Napa.
Yes.
County of Napa and 4 Napa cities.
Yes.
Novato.
Yes.
Oakley.
Yes.
Pinole.
Yes.
Pittsburgh.
Yes.
Pleasant Hill.
Yes.
Richmond.
Yes.
San Anselmo.
Yes.
San Pablo. San Rafael.
Yes. That's a yes for San Rafael.
San Ramon.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Sausalito. Solano County.
Yes.
Tiburon. Vallejo.
Aye.
Walnut Creek.
Yes.
The nomination of Chanel Scales Preston for the seat of chair received 31 votes. The number of votes in favor, 31. There were no votes against. So the number of votes in favor meets the required number of votes. Therefore, this nomination passes. Congratulations.
Thank you all. I appreciate it. I know it's only been a year, but I have enjoyed my year working with all the directors and the team. So thank you again.
Okay, great. And the next office up for election is for the vice chair of the board. Are there any nominations?
I would like to nominate Director Gabe Quinto.
And Director Quinto, please let us know if you accept the nomination of vice chair.
I do accept the nomination for vice chair. Thank you.
Do you need a second?
Second, I second John Joya.
And third and fourth. Okay.
Okay, are there any other nominations for the position of vice chair? Okay, seeing none, is there any public comment on this item?
I see no raised hands, Dawn, online or in San Rafael.
Okay, we will now move to a vote. Director Quinto is nominated, so we will conduct a vote to elect him as vice chair of the MCE board. Darlene, will you please call the roll?
Belvedere,
Yes.
Benicia,
Yes.
Concord,
Yes.
Contra Costa County,
Yes.
Corte Madera,
Yes.
Danville,
Yes.
El Cerrito,
Yes.
Fairfax,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Lafayette,
Yes.
Larkspur,
Yes.
County of Marin,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Mill Valley, Moraga,
Aye.
City of Napa,
Yes.
County of Napa and 4 Napa cities,
Yes.
Novato, Novato,
Yes.
Oakley,
Yes.
Pinole,
Yes.
Pittsburgh,
Yes.
Pleasant Hill,
Yes.
Richmond,
Yes.
San Anselmo,
Yes.
San Pablo, San Rafael,
Yes.
San Ramon,
Yes.
Sausalito, Solano County,
Yes.
Tiburon, Vallejo,
Aye.
Walnut Creek.
Yes.
The nomination of Director Gabriel Quinto for the seat of vice chair. The number of votes in favor are 31. Therefore, this nomination passes.
Director Quinto, is there anything you would like to say before we move on to the next item?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say thank you. And I look forward to working with Chanel Scales Preston one more year, and look forward to working with all the staff and our elected officials as members of the board of directors here. We have a lot of work to do, and looking forward to working with everyone this year. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 8. So this item is a proposed resolution.
By the board require a majority vote.
So does the treasurer, deputy treasurer, and secretary have to be voted on?
That's our next item.
It was part of the same report. Part of the same.
So the next item is a proposed resolution appointing the chief financial officer as treasurer. This is an action item and will be presented by MCE's General Counsel, Catalina. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair. And just a quick note. So we have the treasurer vote by this resolution. The secretary is one that can serve and at the grace of the board. So, and as long as they are willing to keep that position, there's no need to do it on an annual basis per the operating rules. So we're set on that position. So this should be the last election of an officer tonight. So with that, we have the operating rules that designate the treasurer needs to be voted on annually, as well as statute that requires those duties that you delegate to a treasurer to be voted on annually. So the resolution that you have before you this evening, 2024-01, is to appoint Garth Salisbury, who is our CFO and has been our treasurer for the last 4 years, since March of 2020. And he's been with us since March of 2019 and has over 35 years of financial experience. So staff's recommendation is to approve Resolution 2024-01, appointing the CFO as treasurer.
Are there any questions from members on the board on this item? Are there any questions or public comment via Zoom or in San Rafael?
I see no raised hands, Chair.
All right. Well, do we have a motion to approve Resolution 2024-01?
I move the recommendation by council.
Motion made by Director Brown.
I'll second.
We have a second over here.
I'll second San Rafael.
Second in San Rafael. We'll get you next time. Director Lawrence Garlati.
Llorens Gulati, yeah, thanks.
Gulati, thank you. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Belvedere,
Yes.
Benicia,
Yes.
Concord,
Yes.
Contra Costa County,
Yes.
Corte Madera,
Yes.
Danville,
Yes.
El Cerrito,
Yes.
Fairfax,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Lafayette,
Yes.
Larkspur,
Yes.
County of Marin,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Mill Valley, Moraga,
Aye.
City of Napa,
Yes.
County of Napa and 4 Napa cities,
Yes.
Novato,
Yes.
Oakley,
Yes.
Pinole,
Yes.
Pittsburgh,
Yes.
Pleasant Hill,
Yes.
Richmond,
Oh, yes. Sorry about that.
San Anselmo,
Yes.
San Pablo, San Rafael,
Yes.
San Ramon,
Yes.
Sausalito, Solano County,
Yes.
Tiburon, Vallejo,
Aye.
Walnut Creek.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, we're moving on to our last action item for this evening, and this is item number 9. Is in addition to board members to committees. This action item will be presented by our Chief of Staff, Jamie.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I'm excited about having this item on our agenda tonight. I want to start off with a thank you for all of our board members who are currently or who have previously participated on any of our standing or ad hoc committees. April of last year was the last time we made any adjustments to our committee membership, and tonight there are 4 committees that board members have an opportunity to join or make adjustments to. We, of course, have our 2 standing committees, the Executive Committee and Technical Committee. And we also have 2 ad hoc committees that we want to focus on creating tonight. Those are our Ad Hoc Contracts Committee and also our Ad Hoc Audit Committee. And I'll call your attention to the committee rosters that Dawn mentioned earlier, in case you would like to see our most recent rosters for each of those committees. So focusing on our ad hoc committees, the Ad Hoc Contract Committee typically meets 2 to 4 times a year or as needed. And that committee is responsible for reviewing and providing input on responses to our open season offers for power supply, and occasionally also reviews short-term power supply transactions. And obviously we have that coming up with our open season that we will be initiating soon. The other one is the Ad Hoc Audit Committee, and this committee typically meets about 2 times per year as needed, starting in the summer. And the Ad Hoc Audit Committee is responsible for reviewing, selecting, and meeting with an independent auditor for our annual financial statement audit. That committee will meet with the selected auditor at least once independently from staff as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the committees. And if there aren't any questions, I'd like to hand it back to our chair for any feedback from the board about participation.
I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you. I right now serve on the technical committee, but unfortunately the Friday schedule has been really hard and I feel very bad about missing these meetings. I do want to know though, we do have a new alternate that will be coming on board who may be interested in serving on the technical committee. So if I'm not available, he may be able to do that. So is it best to stay on the committee and figure that out, or is it better for me to like step off and then I'm not sure about the scheduling. I don't want to make it more difficult for the committee to meet quorum if I'm on it and can't make it. So I'm not sure about the approach to this that could be advised.
I think if you decided to stay on the committee or withdraw, it wouldn't impact the quorum.
Okay.
So I think it's up to you about your participation, but I really appreciate your consideration of quorum since that's obviously critical to making our meetings happen.
And if you think you can make it some of the time and your alternate can make it when you're not available, we'd love to have you stay on, of course.
And I would too. So thank you for that. I appreciate the information and I would like to stay on the committee. Thank you.
Yeah,
Are there any questions from directors in San Rafael?
Yes, we've got one here. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, it's Katie Rice. I am on the technical committee and I'm not showing on the roster in the packet, but maybe you have a different handout. I have been voting and a member of the quorum, so I think I'm official. It's been a couple years and I'm happy to continue serving on the technical.
You are on that committee. Thank you for noticing that. So sorry. We have another question here in Centerville. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to continue serving on the contracts committee for 2024. Thanks. Barbara Kohler.
Director Perkins?
I'm willing to stay on the technical committee and continue on the ad hoc committee if that's satisfactory. I don't know if you have a kind of term limits on the ad hoc. I've been on for a couple of years, but it's been fruitful and I've learned a lot and enjoyed evaluating the contracts.
There are no term limits. The ad hoc committees, so that they don't get confused for a standing committee, we do need to make at least one change from one year to the next. They need to be dismantled and reformed, but it's fine to continue on. We just might need another person to join the ad hoc contract committee along with directors Kohler and Perkins, and ideally someone who hasn't been on it before. And
I'm happy to serve on the contracts committee. That's a couple times a year and scheduled around us. Great, thanks.
Dawn,
That schedule is always very flexible. The staff works with the members to brief us on the contracts, and so it's not scheduled. It's scheduled around the members.
Yeah. No, thank you very much for that input. I just want to add that as a reminder, it's in that ad hoc group where we bring in the total contract, the unredacted. We share with the board, those board members, all the contractual secrets, if I may say, and explain the nuances of the market, why we are going with what we are going to do. And the board members choose to articulate their opinion at the full board meeting or TechCom or XCOM as that vote is held. The only request is we had talked a lot about the contractual world that we are living in lately. Sometimes we need to have a shorter notice to have a meeting, but appreciate all the participation we had so far from the board members. But please feel free to volunteer. There's a lot of information there. Would love to work with you.
Yeah, it's something to point out is by doing it through an ad hoc committee, we can divulge the particulars that are normally held confidentially that we can't bring forward to a full board meeting or even the full technical committee or standing committee or the executive committee because of the confidentiality of the terms. So by doing it through a ad hoc committee, we can discuss the terms in some level of detail.
If we need to, this is Director Darling, if we need to add somebody, I'd be willing to be the ad.
Oh, we'd love to. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we have 3 confirmed for the ad hoc contract committee.
We have another here in Centerville.
Yeah, I think I currently serve on the executive committee, the contracts committee, and the audit committee, and I'm happy to stay on those 3 committees.
And,
Thank you, Director Wilkerson.
Are we accepting nominations right now for any committee?
And here, yeah,
like
we're unable to hear you.
I'm sorry, we were unable to hear you here in Concord.
Okay, so I would like to present my nomination for the executive committee. And this is Maika Llorens Gulari from San Rafael.
Thank you. Is that the contract committee?
That was the executive committee.
Executive committee, thank you. All right, so.
I would be interested in the contracts committee if needed also.
So Director Meadows for the ad hoc contract committee.
Thank you, Director Meadows. That's really good.
Do we have any additional directors that would like to serve on the ad hoc contracts committee?
Yes, I'd like to serve as well. Gabe Paulson, Larkspur.
I'm sorry, say your name again.
Gabe Paulson, Larkspur.
Director Paulson. Thank you. All right, moving on to the technical committee. Do we have any directors that would like to continue serving or that would like to serve on the technical committee?
There's a comment here in San Rafael, Chair.
Thank you, Director Perkins. Yes?
Yes, it's Gabe Quinto and El Cerrito. I'd like to join the chair from Pinole and join the technical committee. But I'd
Thank you,
also
Vice
like
Chair.
I'd like to continue on the two other committees I'm on as well.
Thank you.
Director Quinto, can you clarify, we have you on executive committee already, and you are volunteering for technical, and what is the other one? You said 3, I think. It might have been another ad hoc. Yeah, it could have been an ad hoc that that is no longer happening this year. Okay, but we have 2 other ad hocs if you do want to join the ad hoc audit committee or contracts committee. Great.
Point of clarification, if I may, if directors are on standing committees and wish to remain on standing committees, do we need to say anything, or is no comment, no change?
I would assume no comment is no change
Great.
for the standing committees. Thank
Perfect.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, so if any directors would like to stay on the committees that's listed, which is the Ad hoc Audit Committee, the Ad hoc Contract Committee, the Technical Committee, and the Executive Committee, then no comment is needed. If you would like to be added to one of those 4 committees I just mentioned, then please let us know.
And I'll clarify that we are looking for an adjustment of some kind on the ad hoc audit committee. That could be any members who would like to join who aren't currently, or if anyone is currently a member and wants to change that.
Yeah, it would be preferred to add at least one more person for the audit committee. And I want to provide one more clarification, Director. I had a couple questions about the VPP, ad hoc VPP is not there at this time, but I'm looking forward to reforming it with some developments soon. But at this time, we are not asking for any participation for that.
I'd like to ask Director Fong if he would like to continue serving on the ad hoc audit committee.
I would. I was of the understanding no comment meant I'm still
You
on the
did say
committee.
that. I was just triple checking. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'd love to stay on the committee. Thank you. Thanks for triple checking.
But you need to have one more. So would anyone else like to serve on the Ad hoc Audit Committee?
Let me make a comment. I would encourage any of the members to, to participate, because it's a great opportunity to get some great insight into the financials of MCE, but more importantly, really understand what the key drivers are and influencers, as well as forecasting as we take a look at what's going on several years from now. How exactly is MCE positioned for success? So it's a lot deeper, a lot more color, a lot more context. And I think it's a good way to learn a lot more if you're interested in understanding MCE.
And perhaps just sharing the timing of the meetings so that everyone knows.
Go to my CFO, Garth. Could you answer that question, please?
Yes. Good evening. So, generally, the ad hoc audit committee meets just as we have a draft of the audit. In years past, we've met twice, but in this past year, we just were able to meet once. So we want to get into a pattern of meeting twice. Going forward, for sure. And so I guess the first meeting probably would happen sometime in July, with the final meeting in August. And then we try to get the audit wrapped up within 6 months of the end of our fiscal year.
I'd like to ask if those meetings are, what's the timing of those meetings? Are they daytime or evening? I am interested in.
Daytime, usually 2 hours.
And do you know what day of the week?
Whenever the board members are available, and the draft is done, and we Ideally, we would like to share it with the board members before we hold the meeting. That was a clear and solid input from the ad hoc audit committee last time, I remember. Thank you, Director Fong and Director Sally. So it's usually 2 hours to pre-meet and then to have another meeting in about a month or two to close it. But in that, what Director Fong shared is what disseminated as far as where we were and where we are going. It's pretty good.
I think this is something that I have time for, so I will raise my hand for this.
I didn't hear.
Thank you, Director Nakamura. She would like to serve.
Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. We get in there. All right. So do we have enough directors serving on each of the committees now?
We do. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this item?
I see no raised hands, Chair.
Thank you. Any raised hands via Zoom?
No raised hands on Zoom.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve the additions to the committees?
Madam Chair, so
Yes.
moved. So moved.
Thank you, Director Murphy.
Second.
Motion made by Director Murphy,
Darling.
seconded by Director Darling. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Belvedere,
Yes.
Benicia,
Yes.
Concord,
Yes.
Contra Costa County, Contra Costa County,
Director Joya?
Is he asleep? Did he respond? Okay. All right. Corte Madera,
Yes.
Danville,
Yes.
El Cerrito,
Yes.
El Cerrito,
Yes.
Fairfax,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Lafayette,
Yes.
Larkspur,
Yes.
County of Marin,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Moraga,
Aye.
City of Napa,
Yes.
Napa County, and 4 Napa cities,
Yes.
Novato,
Yes.
Oakley,
Yes.
Pinole,
Yes.
Pittsburgh,
Yes.
Pleasant Hill,
Yes.
Richmond,
Yes.
San Anselmo,
Yes.
San Pablo, San Rafael,
Yes.
San Ramon,
Yes.
Solano County,
Yes.
Tiburon, Vallejo,
Aye.
Walnut Creek.
Yes.
Is there anyone who might have been out of the room and now
Yes.
returned?
Sorry, please vote yes for Contra Costa.
Thank you. Motion carries, Chair.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 11. It's a discussion item. And it is income graduated fixed charge update.
Actually, Chair,
Oh, I'm
we
sorry,
have
I'm
one.
going too fast. I went too fast. It's item 10. I'm trying to move us along too fast here. It's the legislative session preview. This is a discussion item as well, which will be presented by MCE's Director of Legislative Affairs, Stephanie Chen.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, directors. It's a pleasure to be with you here this evening to do a high-level overview of how we're seeing the 2024 legislative sessions shape up so far, as we are really just out of the gates here. Next slide, please. So these 10 legislators represent MCE's service area, and those of you who follow state politics will note that they are not listed in the same order as they are shown on the slide. This is just how the pictures fit. I want to note that of our 10-member delegation, you'll see 4 members there who have an asterisk next to their name. Those 4, Senators Dodd, Skinner, and Glazer, will all be terming out after this year, and Assemblymember Tim Grayson is running for Senator Glazer's seat. So we're going to see a good amount of turnover in our delegation next year, which is actually in keeping with statewide trends. There's going to be a significant amount of turnover really up and down the state. We're also very excited to see members of our delegation ascending to key leadership roles in their respective houses. Senator McGuire, who represents Marin County and the North Coast, was sworn in last week as the Senate President Pro Tem, and a big thank you to Dawn for attending the ceremony to show our support. And Assemblymember Aguiar Curry, who represents Napa County plus a few others, is serving as Assembly Majority Leader under Speaker Robert Rivas. And Speaker Rivas represents the Central Coast. So between those 3 folks, we actually have three representatives from more rural communities in positions of leadership in their respective houses, which is a bit of a departure from what we've seen over the last few years. Next slide, please. So the bill introduction deadline is tomorrow, and we are fully anticipating a significant rush of bills that are going to be introduced this week. But even early on, we're seeing a very strong continuation of many of the key priorities and themes from last session. Of course, rates and affordability are going to be top of mind again this year because the economy remains very tough for many families and businesses. In particular, concerns about affordability are also heightened by those PG&E rate increases that Dawn mentioned at the beginning of the meeting during her CEO report. Those have caught quite a bit of attention. And so we're already seeing a few bills that are aimed at this issue, including one that would expand eligibility for low-income assistance programs, and at least one that's going to be aimed at reforming net energy metering for solar customers. There's also a bill to repeal the PUC's permission to implement an income-graduated fixed charge, which Mike and Sabrina will talk about in the next agenda item in greater detail. And of course, we will have more to share on all of these bills, as well as the other ones that kind of sneak in at the last minute here this week as we get further into this session. Reliability will again be a big priority for the legislature and the governor's office. You know, we've made it through the last couple of summers pretty well, but we know that it's, just another unfortunate confluence of events that could take us into another grid emergency really any summer or fall. And within the focus on reliability, of course, the pressure to keep building new resources as fast as we can is not going to change anytime soon. But legislators are also recognizing that the transmission and distribution system also needs a lot of investment. And while state agencies are making some progress on an issue that we talked quite a bit about last year, and that's the time that it takes to interconnect new renewable resources to the grid, literally just plugging stuff into the grid, there's still a sense of urgency to do more in this area. And we're seeing some additional action in this area as well. And all of this is causing legislators and advocates alike to take a really hard look at what it's really going to take to get to California's renewable and zero carbon energy goals. And those are listed in the light green box there on the left. And I'll note that MCE is very well positioned with respect to these goals. We hit 95% GHG free with our light green service option in 2022, which is 18 years before the statewide goal, which we definitely make sure to mention to our legislative delegation. But we also make sure to emphasize that the job is very much not done, and we will not be slowing down anytime soon. We also make sure to emphasize that markets are very tight right now, which makes the cost of progress very, very high, and that as a not-for-profit agency, all of those costs are paid by our customers. So we, and also I think the legislature, are acutely aware that these priorities really are in significant tension with each other. We know we need to build a lot of stuff in a pretty short amount of time, and that doing so is going to cost a bunch of money that frankly, customers just don't have. And all of this, of course, is taking place in the context of a significant budget deficit at the state level. Next slide, please.
Before you go on, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you. Is large hydro still considered not renewable?
Large hydro is defined as not renewable, but it does fall into that zero carbon category. So when we get to, could you bump back to the last slide, please? So once we see those zero carbon resources in 2035 and beyond, that's where large hydro plays in.
But if you go to 100% renewable, what happens to all that large hydro energy?
The 100% renewable is actually 60% renewable and 100% zero carbon. So we may actually go beyond 60% renewable, but as long as we have large hydro operating in the state, that's going to fall into the larger circle of zero carbon, but not the smaller circle of renewable, if that makes sense.
And that makes no sense at all.
That's fair.
Director, let me just add a little bit. Really, really great question. Most of the large hydroelectric dams built in the West did not do clear cutting and removal of the forests before flooding. So when they flooded, you have ongoing carbon emissions because there's a dying timber in the lake. Only Department of Water Resources has done clearing of all vegetation and trees before flooding, like Lake Oroville. But the federal ones are not. So I have the same concern as you do, but there is carbon emissions from large hydro.
Yeah, because those Shasta Dam's not going to go away. I mean,
No.
we're not going to tear it down and throw the water away. So it's still going to generate power. So who's going to buy that power if it doesn't fit into your portfolio?
So it does fit into the zero carbon zero emissions resources portfolio. It doesn't fit into the renewable section just by virtue of California statute, but it does fit into that broader 2045 goal.
Okay.
I feel you. Next slide, please. So with respect to the budget, last December, shortly after the extended tax filing deadline, the Legislative Analyst's Office forecast a $68 billion deficit for state fiscal year 24-25, which begins in July. The governor's January draft budget, which came out about a month ago, planned for a $38 billion deficit. And the reason for the difference between these two is in part because that extra month there allowed for more accurate revenue projections, but also frankly, because it's the governor's job, especially in January, to be optimistic about the outlook. And it's the LAO's job to be perhaps a little bit more cautious. I won't spend too much time on the schedule here, but happy to answer any questions about it if there are any. But I do want to flag that in recent years, we have seen significant policy that gets made or attempted through the budget process. You all may recall the conversation last year about AB 1373, the bill about central procurement that was the focus of so much CCA advocacy. That actually started out as like 3 paragraphs in a budget proposal that came out around this time of year. And in years past, we saw programs like the Equitable Building Decarbonization Program and then the Income Graduated Fixed Charge, which are really significant policy priorities, introduced in budget bills. This can be problematic, and legislators don't really like it because the budget process doesn't really have the same level of transparency and deliberation as the policy process does. Even so, though, I don't see this trend really reversing anytime soon. So we're keeping an eye when we do our budget advocacy, not only on spending, but also on policy that comes through the budget. So with respect to climate and clean energy funding, the January draft budget did make some outright cuts to previous multi-year allocations, but we saw even more delays and deferrals. And some of these deferrals actually extend out beyond the end of Governor Newsom's term, which begs the question whether these promises are going to be upheld by the next administration or whether this is just a very, very slow budget cut. The proposed budget also relies quite a bit on federal funds and on cap and trade revenues to fill some of the gaps. And there is still talk of a climate bond on the November ballot, though the amount of the bond as well as what will be contained in it are still being negotiated. And before we jump to the next slide on federal advocacy, I just want to note that next week, MCE will be participating in Cal CCA's Lobby Day. It is the first in-person Lobby Day we will be conducting in full walk the halls form since 2019. And it's going to be a great opportunity to really demonstrate the reach and impact of community choice all across California today. And I just want to take a moment to thank Chair Scales Preston, Director Murphy, and Director Gregory for joining us in Sacramento next week. Next slide, please. So on the federal side of our work, we are working with our colleagues on the customer programs team to prepare 3 earmark requests to submit to our congressional delegation next month. The first is for a water heater loaner program. Most households, including frankly mine last year, replace their water heater when it breaks, but switching from a gas water heater to a heat pump electric water heater usually can't happen the same day. So if a household really needs an emergency replacement, but they can get a loaner heater during the time it takes to line up all the necessary components to install the heat pump water heater, we can avoid the long-term installation of another gas appliance that's going to be in place for another 10 years without requiring any sort of sacrifices or discomfort on behalf of the customer. The second request would support e-bikes, including both bike incentives, plus for multifamily properties, some funds to construct safe storage on the ground floor where tenants can charge their bikes without having to haul them up and down the stairs or the elevator. And the last request would support a restaurant electrification pilot, which would help commercial kitchens replace gas equipment with electric alternatives. And with this one, we would provide custom support to participating restaurants and also develop case studies and lessons learned at the end of the pilot to help more restaurants understand what electrification could mean for them. And I want to note that we will need to submit, when we submit these requests next month, we will need to submit letters of support from local elected officials who are not part of our governing board. So if these are of interest to your community and you might have a colleague who would be willing to sign a letter on behalf of your community, please do let me know. In support of these requests and also to continue building the reputation of California CCAs in Washington, next month MCE will be participating in a joint CCA lobby day along with 5 of our sister CCAs representing different communities all across the state. And I want to take a moment here to thank the board members who have joined us in DC over the past couple of years, Director Murphy, Director Quinto, and Director Joya. Your support for MCE has really helped us build a solid toehold with our congressional delegation, and we're very grateful for your efforts. This year, because we will be doing things jointly with other CCAs, it's going to be a more collaborative, more statewide approach, and our staff will be leading the charge for us as well as for the other CCAs. And as more CCAs are engaging in federal advocacy in the wake of the Inflation Reduction Act and other funding opportunities, this coordination is going to help us ensure a unified voice on priority issues. We're also going to continue to look for opportunities to engage individually with our congressional delegation, especially during the times of year when they are back here in their districts. So if folks are interested in joining us and thinking of opportunities to do that, would love to hear from you as well. Yes, Director
Stephanie, yes, a couple of questions. First, a lot of chatter on nuclear. Is that back on the table?
Well, I'll tell you after tomorrow. So I anticipate that it will. I anticipate that it will be in some fashion. We did see a couple of bills on nuclear last year that did not advance. But I think, especially given conversations around small modular reactors, it wouldn't surprise me if we see more. But again, I haven't seen anything yet.
Okay. And then the second question is the Inflation Reduction Act with $700 billion that's going to be distributed in some shape or form. My understanding is that that whole process is starting to roll out, and I'm wondering what is that impact on, MCE, and more importantly, what role do you play in, I guess, capturing some of those dollars?
Yes, absolutely. So there are several programs or grant opportunities within the Inflation Reduction Act that we are keeping an eye on, from everything to production of electrolytic hydrogen to support for equitable building decarbonization for our low-income and EJ communities. So we are keeping an eye on all of those opportunities that would be directly available to MCE, as well as those opportunities that are, individual tax credits for a home or a business, and making sure that our communities have information about those as those are rolling out.
Just a quick question too. On the lobbying in DC, so our experience has been very positive. I think we lobbied most of the members in our congressional delegation, mostly in Contra Costa County and I believe Miranda Napa area. But I do oftentimes hear the challenges of, lobbying, especially for small cities, right? In DC, we're seeing a lot of progress in terms of bills that have been passed, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, and of course the IRA. But I'm wondering if you can elaborate a little bit more about the landscape of program implementation on as it relates to kind of the competitiveness between CCAs and IOUs. I know some states don't even allow CCAs. Is that a topic of discussion in this kind of joint advocacy? I'm imagining that this work is now going to expand beyond just the delegation we talked to when we went to DC to perhaps across California, other congressional members.
So CCAs that are in different areas who have different congressional representatives will be meeting with their representatives as we will be meeting with our representatives. But the focus will be on California CCAs and, just highlighting all of the impacts that we are having, highlighting where we are participating in federal opportunities. It's not going to be about the community choice model in other states.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense. I was just wondering about do you have are you able to elaborate a little bit about that landscape for outside of California? I mean, are we seeing, for example, a lot of support from Congress overall on program implementation of things that are being passed? So whether it's budget, whether it's IRA, whether it's, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, are we seeing a lot of support in Congress overall?
California's delegation, I think in particular, the folks who represent districts that are served by CCAs are generally quite positive and very values aligned with, clean energy and even Justice 40 and equity and environmental justice. So I think we do see a lot of great alignment there. It actually, makes our support for federal initiatives a little bit moot because our California support is assumed on a lot of those issues. Great. But yeah, we do have a lot of great alignment up and down the state of California on not just those funding opportunities, but on federal legislation to, for example, accelerate transmission build out in the areas that are not specifically controlled by states. So we do see a lot of opportunities there.
Great, thank you.
Great questions.
Hey, Stephanie, Jessica here in San Rafael. Our vice chair has a comment.
Thank you very much. Stephanie, I wanted to give you an update. I met with the governor as second vice president of the League of California Cities. My executive committee met with the governor last week. Looking at the deficit, it's no longer at 38. It's somewhere in the middle, and he wouldn't give us. We were trying to pinpoint a number, and he wouldn't give it to us. So, so just wanted to let you know about that. And then also in deficit years, remember Governor Brand was dealing with a $22 million deficit. We're probably in the 40s or 50s right now on our deficit. And usually the first thing to go is usually housing and environmental legislation. So we did speak about the possibility of climate bonds. So he seemed, he did let us know about, he does support that overall, but he also supports the housing bonds that Assemblymember Buffy Wicks would like to do. So between that and the other bonds that is on the, this could be on the back burner. So know that we are concerned about this, but when you meet with legislators in Sacramento, please mention climate bonds and the importance of that, because we cannot put these things on the back burner any longer, and we need to deal with it now. So this is a way during deficit years when we can just all work on this together instead of just waiting. So I did speak about the floods and so much going on, including the fires in previous years. And he definitely gets it. He did mention to me about the 8 disaster areas in 8 different counties in California, and the importance of making sure that we are present everywhere up and down the state of California. So looking on that, if you can please check and see when you speak to the legislators in Sacramento, where is the deficit now, and what can we do with climate bonds? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Through the chair, just a quick question to Mr. Fong. When you talk about the nuclear power plant, are you talking about Diablo that's going to stay open longer than it should, in my opinion? Or are you talking about that we're going to be building more? I just was curious because I don't want any built. I'm still mad at Bill Dodd for sponsoring that legislation as it is.
Yeah, I'll defer to Stephanie, but it's what I've heard is a lot of chatter regarding nuclear. And it's primarily because of issues with renewable energy, cost of renewable energy going forward.
Well, the $1.4 billion to keep, okay, all right.
I'm just asking the question. Okay. Stephanie, I'll defer to you if you have got more comments about that.
Sure. I mean, I think, the only thing I'll say now is without having seen any new bills yet this year, the current law does prohibit the construction of any new nuclear facilities in California until a permanent solution for nuclear waste can be identified. So for now, we are status quo.
Are there any additional questions from directors and Director Darling?
Just a quick question. I know the regional grid proposal was turning into a 2-year bill last time we heard. Is that coming back to life, or is that too much?
Great question. So as of right now, that work has come out of the legislative arena into a sort of working group of multi-state regulators, advocates, market participants that is working not behind closed doors, but outside of the legislative session. It's in public forums. Happy to share more information about that if you'd like some details there. CalCCA is very actively participating there. And what they're doing now is trying to figure out what incremental first steps can be taken without requiring California legislation. So that the idea, I think, is to kind of get the ball rolling a little bit, to take the existing markets and further remove them, create fully independent governance for those markets. And then in 2025, if there is an identified next step that does require a legislative solution, I anticipate that that's going to be the first.
Okay, that's good to know. It's good that they're not abandoning it.
Not abandoned.
And sometimes the legislature is not the place to find a solution. So.
Say a lot of the time.
Are there any questions from our directors in San Rafael or one of our satellite locations?
I see no raised hands, Chair.
All right. Do we happen to have any public comment on this item? All right. Seeing none. Moving on to item number 11. Thank you, Stephanie. All right. So item number 11 is also a discussion item and will be presented by MCE Senior Policy Analyst and Associated General Counsel. I'll turn this over to Sabrina and Mike.
Thank you very much. My name is Michael Callahan. I'm Director of Policy at MCE. I'm joined by Sabrina on the line. Thank you, Sabrina, for being here. She's our lead on the income graduated fixed charge, and there's been a lot of coverage on this. It's a big issue. There's been additional legislative action, so I wanted to make sure you all were aware of some of the contours or the process. So that's what this update is for. Next slide. So a little bit of background. The income graduated fixed charge was created in AB 205. It was that budget bill Stephanie mentioned, so it didn't go through the full policy discussion. And it requires this charge to be established for all residential customers. It also requires the PUC, the California Public Utilities Commission, to approve this charge by July of this year. However, in January, a bill, AB 1999, was introduced to repeal that requirement. That has not been passed yet. So as of now, the income graduated fixed charge is still required, but that may be repealed. Next slide. So what is an income graduated fixed charge? Basically, it is a fixed fee that is determined by income bracket. It's a little bit similar to taxes. It recovers fixed costs that don't change with customer usage. And so this is primarily poles and wires that the utilities own. They don't, operations, maintenance costs don't really change very much if those poles and wires are being used or by how much. And so it's those costs primarily that they're looking to move. And the concept is to not increase the overall revenue for the utilities with this new charge. It's just collecting the same amount of revenue through a different mechanism. And if we go to the next slide, you can see just a high level illustration of that. So today, a lot of the charges from residential customers are just variable, depends on how much energy you use. Right now, they'd shift some of those into the fixed charges, but the idea is at the top line there, they'd be collecting, again, the same amount of revenue. Next slide. There's been a range of proposals made at the California Public Utilities Commission. This is a bit of a snapshot of them, and they come from a lot of different stakeholders. They range from $0 for a fixed fee for low-income customers all the way up to about $90 for a fixed fee for high-income customers. You can see PG&E's put in one. The California Public Advocates Office, a ratepayer group, has put in one. The Utility Reform Network, another ratepayer group with the Natural Resources Defense Council, has put in one. Solar Energy Industry Association has put in one, as well as the Sierra Club. And I'll hand it over to Sabrina now to discuss the impacts to customers.
Thank you. Can you go to the next slide, please? Perfect. So when we look at all these proposals, I think naturally kind of the first question that folks ask, rightfully so, is how will this impact customers and their bills? And really, it's perhaps unsatisfying, but the answer is it depends. The customer impact will really vary depending on the IGFC that is ultimately adopted by the PUC. And as mentioned before by Mike, the total revenue requirement of PG&E won't change. And so an increase in the level of the fixed charge essentially will be offset by lower per kilowatt hour rates from transmission and distribution rates. And really, the individual customer impacts will depend on the type of customers that they are. One of the features of AB 205 is that it requires that low-income customers see bill savings on average without any change in usage. And so that's a really broad requirement. And of course, under any rate design change where we're simply modifying the rate design and not modifying the amount of revenue the rates are designed to collect, we know that some customers will benefit more than others. And so what we kind of wanted to highlight here is kind of what the rate impacts will be to some groups of customers. And on this first point, I think what some of the analysis that we've seen thus far has shown is that CARE and FARA customers who are at or below the federal poverty level will generally save money on their monthly and annual energy expenditures under income graduated fixed charges. But all other customer groups, including the CARE and FARA customers who are above the federal poverty level, and NEM customers, solar customers, and customers who generally use less will be worse off or pay more over the course of the year. Next slide, please. All right, and so on this side, we just want to kind of dig in a little bit, and I'll note that the data and the charts on the next two slides come from analysis that Ava Community Energy, a CCA in the East Bay, did with data from their customers. So using data, their customers' income and usage data. And really, I think kind of the key takeaway on this slide is that kind of the absolute bill impacts. This just shows for CARE and FARA customers, will they pay more or less under a range of proposals? And so we have two proposals by PG&E on this slide, one by Cal Advocates. The PG&E proposals have higher fixed costs, The Cal Advocates has a lower. And then we also demonstrated, you know, under AB 1999, what that bill would do is set a maximum fixed charge of $5 per month for care customers and $10 per month for all other customers, regardless of income bracket. And I just want to note that at this point, AB 199 isn't actually, they're not proposing that there has to be a $5 or $10 income graduated fixed charge, but that would be the maximum. So really we're just showing here that under really all of these proposals, care and FARA customers, a majority of care and FARA customers would pay more. Pay more over the course of the year. But as we'll dig in on the next slide, please. What really matters, I think, is maybe this distribution of annual net bill impact. And really, I think there's a lot going on this slide, and it's still the same 4 proposals, but really kind of the key takeaway here is that higher fixed charges lead to greater bill impacts, and really both positive and negative. And if you look at the graph on the top right, that is one of PG&E's proposal, and that is a proposal that has the highest level of proposed fixed charges. And really what that graph is showing is that there are the greatest number of customers who will be paying more or less, and a lot of customers are going to be impacted. And then if you go down to the bottom right, under AB 1999, that has the most number of customers who are paying more, but it's the smallest amount of total increase. And so again, really just key takeaway here, highlighting that what is actually approved for a fixed cost is going to drive the bill impacts for customers. Next slide, please. All right, so yeah, where does IGFC stand now? It is a little bit of a complicated and tricky situation. As Mike mentioned, we are in the middle of a regulatory proceeding at the CPUC. The statutory deadline remains for AB 205 to adopt an income graduated fixed charge by July of this year. And we have heard recently that the CPUC is expected to release a proposed decision by the end of this quarter. So in the next 6 weeks or so, we might be hearing from the PUC. Of course, there is that tension with the new bill that was introduced that would repeal the IGFC. So I think really we are in a little bit of a holding pattern to see whether or not the PUC will be able to implement an income graduated fixed charge. And I think that is really the best information we have at this time, is that we're going to wait to see what the CPUC does, and also wait to see what the legislature does. And it's going to be an interesting few months on this front, and we'll continue to provide updates as they become available. And I think that is all we had on this slide deck, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you, Michael and Sabrina. Do we have any questions from directors in San Rafael?
Yeah, I had a couple questions. This might be a naive one, but how are incomes determined? And secondly, as far as the bracketing, the graduation, there's nothing about usage, right? And is that something that the fixed charges, poles and wires, doesn't create an incentive? If someone is a low income, high energy user, what's to disincentivize them from overuse?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I'm going to jump in here because you're getting into some of the stating some of the talking points that we've been using in talking to legislatures about this exact issue. And I think that, one of our big concerns is how the CPUC might administer income verification. That's a pretty complicated thing for any agency to do. It's not something that the CPUC has a lot of experience with beyond, the care FARA programs, and those we've seen a lot of difficulty with enrollments there. We have a lot of customers that could fit into care and FARA criteria, but haven't gone through the application process. It's that's a whole nother issue. So one of the concerns that we've raised is, how much time, is there adequate time to get that dialed in a way that it would be effective? Currently, there's not a clear methodology that's out there. So I think that that's something we should definitely be taking a look at. And as far as, how the brackets are set up, how would this incentivize energy use? I think we've got sort of there's the rock and the hard place that we're kind of between here. I think the issue that we're needing to be sensitive to is that there are a lot of low-income customers in the Central Valley where it's really hot, and they are really relying on air conditioning, especially as we see more severe weather events happening in the summertime. Their energy costs can really skyrocket, and there's not an easy way to deal with that right now. And I think the IGFC is a attempt to get at that problem. But as you've seen, it does create some unanticipated side effects that might be just as bad or maybe even worse. So, we don't have easy solutions to this, but we're all sort of grappling with what would be the best way to go forward.
And just one follow-up. Thanks, Don. So I infer from your comments that MCE hasn't really taken a position. Okay, thanks.
I just have one quick question, which is, why are they applying this only to residential and not commercial? I mean, they use the same lines and poles.
Welcome, Stephanie, to jump in if you have thoughts on that. My sense is there are fixed costs for commercial customers. There's demand charges, and there's other ways of recovering those costs. And this is a way to, as Dawn was pointing out, address some equity challenges for the residential customer specifically. So moving the bills from being a regressively collected amount and trying to make it more progressive in the way that taxes are, again, to address the equity issue that Dawn raised.
Are there any questions from directors here in Concord? Director Brown?
So this is the state that still hasn't dealt with the EDD. Here's my concern, is that when my constituents get an increase in their Social Security, that means that their food stamps amount goes down. And so my concern is when we get these increases, and in Solano County, I have over 100,000 seniors, that there's going to be an inequity because chances are now they're going to have to find the money to pay extra for energy because having any kind of savings for their energy in terms of I'm not going to do laundry until midnight or however is not going to come through. And now I'm going to have to try to find funding in order to help them at a time when I have less money coming in from the feds, let alone the state. So I just think this is a disaster that's not going to get resolved in the next 6 weeks. So if you're going to do any kind of lobbying, can we maybe postpone some of this till some of this all gets worked out so that we do not hurt our low income folks? That is my big concern.
Yeah, and I'll just point out that we do have, quite a few more steps in the process. A proposed decision by the CPUC is probably the earliest next step that we might see if the legislation doesn't start to gain a lot of momentum. And the proposed decision would, kind of zero in on one of the solutions that we've presented this evening. We'll certainly come back to you and let you know what's happening if we see something like that come out.
Do we have any public comment on this item? All right, seeing none, we will move on to the last discussion item for this evening. Item number 12. Dickon is excited over here in Concord. I will actually turn this over to Dickon to introduce the item.
Thank you very much. It's last but not least. So this is, I think it's very exciting. So just as a reminder, the board had a pretty interesting dynamic discussion at the September board retreat about power plants. And there was a good discussion. And then on November 16, we invited Wellhead company that we have a contractual deal with in a power plant in the Fresno area that is coupled with large battery storage that provides RA to us. So, and we've been talking about reducing our risk, providing more certainty to our customers, controlling costs in this ever, I'm trying to be nice here, dynamic market with ever increasing prices and dwindling supply that we are, we've been talking about considering procurement, direct ownership of different transmission and generation assets. So Mike Callahan will go through a presentation that will depict almost all generation assets, including nuclear, just as for information. And even before we get there, I just want to say that those micro turbines, there was one location in Utah, they were testing 450-megawatt jackets, they went belly up. So they don't exist anymore. That was the only test that was going on the smaller scale. So with that, and looking forward for your questions and interest levels, and we'll dive into a little bit as Mike is making the presentation. Please go ahead, Mike.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Vicken. And you'll see here at the top of the overview slide a list of the technologies we're going to breeze through today. It's going to be a pretty quick presentation, so gear up. But it's also not going to go super deep. The intent here is really to give you all just a foundational understanding of some of these technologies and their contours. Next slide. This is a snapshot of a piece of MCE's power content label. So this is just to give you a sense as we're going through these technologies, the sort of penetration of these technologies in our portfolio, where we're focused, where we aren't. You'll notice there's no coal in MCE's portfolio in any of our products. There's some that shows up in the California power mix, but not in our portfolio. And similarly, natural gas is zeroed out, as are other technologies. We'd love to see some more geothermal and some of these other things. But that's what the procurement team is working on. Next slide. So fossil fuels. There's a couple examples here, coal and fossil gas. And I've got some stats on the left side for many of these technologies, not all of them, but they are all exclusively construction costs and construction timelines. These do not include permitting. They do not include other related activities. Just for construction, just to give a snapshot of comparison. And, a top line, these resources are losing to renewables because they do not have fuel costs. And so across the country, it's easier for renewables to come in at a lower price than these resources because of that lack of fuel costs. Coal is prohibited in California by law. It has tremendous environmental impacts, both emissions in the air and water and soil contamination issues as well. Fossil gas, sometimes referred to as natural gas, is needed for reliability today, particularly for the evening peak. But there's very limited interest in new gas plants. The state's trying to figure out how to stop using them as opposed to building more of them. Next slide. Solar and storage is a sort of a bread and butter resource for California. There's a few different categories of resources here. You can see at the top is standalone solar. California's done a tremendous amount of that. More recently, California has shifted to doing a lot of solar plus storage. That helps with the economics because you can deliver that energy at higher value moments. And finally, standalone storage, just a battery that charges from the grid, doesn't charge from any solar adjacent to it. So across the board here, good penetration, particularly on solar and dropping costs. We need to keep going. The solar itself is really helping to meet midday reliability challenges. Meeting that peak in the middle of the day used to be difficult, and now we have a tremendous amount of solar to do that, particularly in non-winter months where there's more solar. Standalone storage is critical. Those new big battery banks are critical for reliability and to help incorporate new renewables into the grid. Even if they're not co-located, they'll charge from those renewables as the renewable penetration gets bigger and bigger. But there's some notes here. These are grid charged assets. So right now, if there's gas on the grid, they're charging with gas. There's nuclear on the grid, they're charging with nuclear. And so they just take what the grid has. There also are not technically generators. There's a round trip efficiency loss with a battery. When you charge it and discharge, you get less out than you put in. And so they actually are new load as opposed to generators, but they do provide reliability. So it's a bit of a tweener resource. Solar curtailments are a challenge. Sometimes the grid is so congested that we can't put the solar that we're generating onto. We have to stop trying to put it on. That causes economic harm and reduces the ability to bring in more renewables. Solar's also exacerbating the evening reliability challenge because the sun goes down and then evening usage goes up. And the more solar you have, the steeper that ramp is. And that's what a lot of folks refer to as the duck curve. There are also equity issues with solar, both in the production chain. We've heard about issues in China with labor, as well as in construction. Valley fever is a fungal infection that can happen when you disturb the soil in the California Central Valley, and it's a growing issue for solar construction workers. Next slide. Wind is another really important resource. There's two kind of categories here: onshore, of which there's a fair amount of development, can do more, and offshore, of which there's very little development and a lot of interest. It's a clean intermittent resources. There's an opportunity to add batteries to help with the intermittency, similarly to how solar has done. And again, limited onshore development, but a strong interest in growing the offshore development. It's a more reliable resource. It lasts for more hours of the day. There's a lot of capacity to get out there. But there are challenges. We need to have transmission to move that power off of the ocean. We need to have ports that are able to accommodate building out at scale. And there's been some movement. There's about a $500 million grant from the U.S. Department of Energy to start this work for the Humboldt area and additional exploration in other parts of California. And the legislature last year, Stephanie mentioned this in her update, passed a bill, AB 1373, that creates a central procurement entity that would allow the state to assign offshore wind and other resource procurement to go do it on behalf of customers and load-serving entities. So a good bit of political interest behind offshore wind in California. Next slide. Hydropower. A few different categories of resources here. Large hydro, think Hoover Dam. Small hydro is what you see in that picture, maybe a run-of-the-river project. And then pumped hydro is a third category where you can actually pump water when you have extra energy and save it for when you need that energy, and then you discharge. Large hydro has the ability to do that dispatch as well when you need it. Small hydro typically doesn't. It's typically you just kind of take what you get, run of the river, as they say. Well, hydropower is really important. It's a GHG-free, greenhouse gas-free resource, but it has significant environmental impacts. I think we've all probably heard about the challenges with salmon and other fish related to being able to use rivers that are dammed. And, I mentioned the run of the river. You can see that picture back there. It's one of those facilities. It's not dispatchable. You just take what you get. And pumped hydro acts like storage, but it's also expensive. PG&E owns a facility, the Helm storage facility. They're actually proposing to expand as we speak. And there is some planned dam removal for fish habitat. There are a lot of dams throughout the West, a lot of federal dams, and those are really important to maintain reliability, and particularly with clean energy. We are aware that there are a number of dams planned to be removed. There are 13 dams on the Columbia River that are planning to be removed. And we anticipate, while great for the environment, may have reliability impacts and may limit imported energy for California, which is a really important source of energy. Next slide. Nuclear. There's three kinds of technologies. I'm going to breeze over here. Reprocessing is one. That's where you take sort of spent nuclear fuel and you run it through a factory to make it usable as fuel again. That doesn't happen in the United States. France does that a little bit. It doesn't happen in the United States partly because you are expanding the footprint of nuclear infrastructure, and there are a lot of safety and security risks with doing that. It's also expensive. The United States uses conventional nuclear power plants like the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant. Vicken mentioned modular nuclear reactors. That is something that is growing interest. But as Vicken also mentioned, there was a development in Utah by NuScale Power that recently failed, which has delivered a setback for those folks. So in California, there's a moratorium on new nuclear construction until we figure out what to do with the fuel and whether we will be doing reprocessing. We all, I think, probably know that nuclear waste is radioactive for thousands of years, threatening public health and the environment if it's not managed responsibly. the contamination around the Fukushima nuclear plant in Japan that recently had a meltdown, the groundwater contamination was found to be 160,000 times the legal limit for strontium. It's estimated that it will be 20,000 years before humans can inhabit the area around Chernobyl. And that could have been a hemispheric event. So the issues are serious, and we need to consider them related to nuclear energy. PG&E's Diablo Canyon Power Plant is the last commercial operating nuclear power plant in California. There are other plants used for military uses and research. And again, growing interest and concerns regarding modular nuclear reactors, but the latest progress there seems to have stalled. Next slide. Biomass there's a lot of technologies and resources that fall under the umbrella of biomass. And so again, skimming the surface here, but there's a big nexus to agriculture with agricultural waste and a need to dispose of that, with wildfire and wildfire risk mitigation when you're moving wood out of forests. What do you do with that? As well as municipal waste. We need to be diverting our organic waste from our landfills. So what do we do with it? And there's lots of types of fuels that you can use to generate energy with biomass technologies: wood, seaweed, trash, pretty much anything organic. And many ways of creating energy. There's lots of different technology. You can burn it. That's sort of the traditional way, very polluting. There's higher tech ways of, high heat, high pressure, kind of cracking the molecules, even creating hydrogen, and more sophisticated ways of doing biomass that can be cleaner. MCE has developed a set of responsible biomass principles that will guide our procurement decisions of these resources to avoid things like locating them in densely populated areas or areas that are impacted, disadvantaged communities, trying to avoid sort of the worst fuels and the worst technologies. And we're always taking feedback on those. So if anybody has colleagues or friends. I know Director Kohler and Pere have connected us with folks in the past. We'd love to have conversations with people that are engaged in this area, particularly to incorporate an equity perspective and to continue to strengthen that part of them. Next slide. Hydrogen, another very interesting technology, and it's a very fungible fuel. And there's a lot of momentum behind hydrogen. In fact, there's quite a bit of hydrogen that gets produced today. In fact, pretty much most of the hydrogen today is gray hydrogen. There's different flavors or colors. Gray hydrogen is produced with largely methane. It could be produced with coal. And that is most of the hydrogen produced today. Blue hydrogen is also produced with methane or coal, but most of the carbon is captured and they sequester it. So carbon capture and sequestration you may have heard of. Another controversial technology, but that's blue hydrogen. And then green hydrogen is the one that MCE supports, which is actually generating hydrogen only from renewable energy. And we also prefer only incremental renewable resources to generate that hydrogen. And creating hydrogen is energy intensive, but it is storable. Batteries wear out. Hydrogen can sit in a tank for a very long time until it's needed. And so there's a lot of interest in using hydrogen and expanding the use of hydrogen for energy, including for transportation. And again, depending on the color and the flavor, you can have it be 100% emissions free by design. How you use it also affects the impacts. If you burn the hydrogen, that can drive more air impacts versus running it through a fuel cell, which would produce less nitrogen oxides and other things that folks are concerned about. Ultimately, there's a lot of interest in hydrogen. We would like to see better community understanding and consistent regulations. We think there's some greenwashing risk here. There's a lot of fossil fuel companies that are really the major proponents of developing a massive hydrogen economy. And a lot of hydrogen, as I said, is produced by fossil fuels today. Folks are seeing if we're going to stop using fossil gas in our gas pipelines, well, maybe we could start replacing with hydrogen that's made from fossil gas. So just kind of one step removed. And there are public subsidies going here. So again, we would really like to see all of this momentum going toward green hydrogen as opposed to creating, another industry for fossil fuels to continue to run their infrastructure. Next slide. Geothermal, another really important technology. And, this is technically a renewable resource. It is defined as renewable under California law, but it has emissions. There can be some carbon emitted from geothermal. And it has environmental impacts. You can create some toxic water when you're cycling it to get the heat. We contract with the Calpine Geysers facility. It's not too far from here. It's a big geothermal resource for California, has been for a while, and we're very excited to work with them. There's also interest in expanding geothermal at the Salton Sea. There's environmental impacts associated with that. You know, the Salton Sea was largely created from sort of an environmental disaster where irrigation runoff went into a place that it could not, there was no outflow. And so it just kept evaporating and concentrating all these toxics into that space. And so it is toxic just from the water that's there. And so any additional work to churn over new water, expand the industrial sort of applications there, risks exacerbating existing and very extensive environmental impacts in that area. There's also interest in lithium mining in that area, just a related to that same geographic space. And as I mentioned, the toxic water that you both generate through geothermal and again also exists in the Salton Sea. And there's growing interest in geothermal in smaller scale systems for heating and cooling. So one to keep an eye on for sure. Next slide. And there's a whole host of technologies that are under research and development. These are not all of them, but we have lots of opportunities ahead. Producing algae at scale to both, sequester carbon as well as create a source for biofuels and other energy. Tidal energy, can we capture, the moon and the sun moving so much water every day, put a turbine under the Golden Gate Bridge, for example. Micro turbines in municipal water systems. Can we capture some of the energy that's happening when that water's flowing through those systems? And nuclear fusion, which is, many decades off, but an exciting opportunity for large scale clean energy. Challenges exist across the board here. The U.S. Department of Energy plays a big role supporting the research of these technologies. And that is it for the slide. If you want to go to the next one, I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions from Director Brown?
Yeah. Hi. So you need to watch the PBS that talked about lithium, not only at the Salton Sea, which I used to go fishing way back when for Corvina, as well as Nevada, because it takes so much clean water, and we haven't figured out how to clean that water in a time when we don't have a lot of clean water because of climate change. So I'm not sure why the Salton Sea was brought forward. I know in Solano County, we have a 45-day moratorium on lithium batteries, and it'll probably be, depending upon how I'm reading I'm not making a decision. I don't want to be recused, but chances are we'll do 2 years because chances are lithium will be gone and then we'll be able to use salt. There'll be other ways to have some sort of battery. So I'm not sure, sir, why that was brought forward. I think there's more negativity with lithium and there's a lot of arsenic and other things happening in the Salton Sea. So I'm hesitant on that. Everything else I liked, but I'm hesitant on that one.
I appreciate that. Sorry, Vic, are you going to say something?
I just want to say that we are just introducing to the board what's out there available. I just want to say it that the only thing we are actually interested in procuring is probably solar in non-lithium battery hybrid generation that makes sense to us. Way in the future, when we can get into green hydrogen, maybe some kind of a plant like that. But we're not recommending to build large hydroelectric facilities, or they're just introducing to you what's out there.
As somebody who's been doing government a long time, sir, and I apologize through the chair for butting in, once it gets written down, sometimes it just kind of works its way and passes. I don't trust us, okay, and I'm part of the government, so.
Thank you, Director Brown. Do we have any? Yes.
Oh, sorry. No, I just want to thank you, Michael. That was a really excellent, I think, introduction. It was a great presentation. I appreciate the information.
Chair, we have a comment here in San Rafael, and we also have a comment on from City of Napa.
Okay.
And I'm so sorry, but if I could make a quick comment directly to Director Hillis in Moraga. Director Thier is at the door and trying to get in. Just wondering if you can let her in. Thank you.
I will go see if I can see where she is.
Can I just make a quick comment, or are you going to San Rafael next?
No, we're going to you next.
Oh, awesome. Well, I just want to say this was a really interesting presentation to look at the cost, in millions of dollars per megawatt and how many years of development to just leave, to me, a really positive note on the economics of solar and storage that we're working so hard to develop, the potential economics of, particularly onshore wind. There's a lot of other things that are out there and developing, and that's all exciting as we look forward. But I think for the boots on the ground and the work we're doing now, this year, next year, to me, it just says not only are we doing the right thing in terms of what's right for climate change and for the world, but this is economically where things are going, and I think that's a win-win. So I really appreciate the presentation.
Thank you. And Don, you mentioned we have a director in San Rafael.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Chair. Gabe Quinto and El Cerrito. I spoke to Senator Caballero when I was in Sacramento, and she represents a lot of the Central Valley, the farmlands off Fresno, and an interesting conversation because she spoke about a lot of the solar that's being built there and where temporary workers come in and they leave, and there is less and less agricultural fields available now. So a lot of people out of work, and she's not happy about that. And she's not happy with a lot of the solar that's being put in her area because it means less jobs for people there. It's a very depressed area, probably one of the neediest areas in the state of California. So I'm hoping in the future that CCAs closely look at that and work on equity. Maybe we can include local people there to help with the installations. Let's give them some green jobs. But that's one of the main things she spoke to me about, that she gave me an earful. And I had no idea about that, but I wanted to let this board know about my conversation with her. And it's something that I had no idea about. So something to look at in the future, and because they're not with us. They're definitely not with us. They don't like the temporary workers just going in and out. And a lot of diesel fumes coming in that way from the folks that are installing that. And we need to do a better job on equity for especially dealing with solar. I also spoke to her about different things like in green hydrogen, for example. And this is something that I believe those areas would be quite interested in, because a lot of the green waste that is used can be turned into green hydrogen. I took the tour with Fiona Ma a couple of years ago on the catamaran. I believe Damon Conley joined me on that as well. And to see how that vehicle was able to go from France all the way down the Horn to San Francisco and then to Tokyo. I truly believe that is the fuel of the future that we need to look at. I know Don and I and a couple of other folks from MCE did take a look at what the hydrogen projects on buildings and with battery energy storage. That truly is the way to go, and looking forward to that future. In the meantime, I know we have the mayor of Richmond over there, and I know he looked at some smaller wind turbines there. Mayor, did you want to speak on that? Because I see that as great possibilities of what we can do in the Bay Area in the future.
Well, we're actually looking at the offshore wind industry and how the Richmond port can be part of that. And in terms of hydrogen, we are working with Raven to produce hydrogen from green waste. So those are the areas that we're working in. I'm curious about the research and development in other areas, such as uh, uh, tidal waves. Do you have any idea how much money is going into research and development in those areas that was mentioned?
I don't have that offhand, but happy to follow up with that.
Okay, much appreciated. Thank you.
Do we have any additional questions from directors?
Yes, we have a couple here in San Rafael, Chair.
Mike, I have a question for you, which is, can you sort of elaborate on the disconnect between the sort of American view on nuclear versus the view in many other countries in the world that are increasing their commitment to nuclear, because many see it as the only scalable baseload energy source that's going to solve our climate issues. Nothing else can scale in the same way with the same tiny footprint that nuclear provides. And with all of the new technologies and safety profiles and increased, different changing economic profiles and reduced life of waste and all of these things that are going on in the rest of the world, there seems to be this sort of no to nuclear in the States, which I'm sort of at a loss to understand. So I'd love for, and even in Japan, which experienced Fukushima, they cut down for a while and they're back into nuclear because they realize it's the only way to solve the challenge. And so I'm curious to understand where that disconnect comes from.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to provide a personal perspective on that. I think, a lot of the support for nuclear in other parts of the world, again, from my perspective, has been driven out of energy security issues. Like Europe has not had access to a lot of fossil fuels, have had to import that. And so France has deepened their role, for example, in nuclears. And that helps with their national security and their energy security. The United States has really just not been that strapped because we've had tremendous amount of coal and natural gas, fossil gas, to draw on over that same time. I think we've also, had 3 Mile Island. We've seen those issues, and the politics of nuclear in America is a big driver. It's not just about sort of the, how to measure it and what the risks or quantified risks look like. It's also the political tone. Like I think the bills last year in nuclear in California didn't go anywhere because the politics are just very difficult in California. So I think there's a national security lens to it, and I think there's a political lens to it as well. Those are two challenges. I know, in the United States, a lot of folks don't have faith in, ultimately the safety of the industry, partly because the industry is built on a federal government assumption of the risk of all the fuel, and they still haven't figured out what to do to dispose of that fuel. And so I think, on one hand, you have a need for that energy. On the other hand, you have, real risks to safety and health that need to be examined together without a lot of clarity ahead of time. I think your microphone.
I say it seems a little ironic because the risks from climate change massively outweigh the risks from nuclear. And so it seems a bit like keeping your head in sand. I feel like everybody should watch the documentary Nuclear Now. It's really sort of enlightening just in terms of the basics of why we are where we are today. And I just think as an agency, I understand it's banned in California right now, but it's really important to pay attention to the rapidly changing technology landscape on nuclear because it's moving quickly in so many different areas.
I believe we have another comment here in San Rafael.
Yes, thanks. I just had a quick question, which is where do the numbers come from in terms of the cost estimates?
I think those were all from the U.S. Energy Information Administration.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Do we happen to have any public comment?
I see no raised hands, Chair.
All right. That was our last discussion item this evening.
Chair, just.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Sorry. I'm still excited about it.
I see.
I know it's 9 o'clock. So thank you again for all the great input. I just want to say that MCE, we're getting ready to take the next step in our evolution, financially secure evolution to reduce the risk, provide additional certainty to our customers in providing green and greenhouse gas-free resources, by getting out of this really tough competitive environment. We will recommend to the board in the budget discussion a line item where we will begin doing asset ownership, where we're going to put some funds, where we will consider having transmission-like structures to be built to reduce, if not eliminate, curtailments. Significant amount of curtailments we're seeing from our generation assets, solar only. Probably we are working on having a place we can call it home to own our own office building. And last but not least is ownership of generation assets. It will gonna work on putting an amount out there that will make a pretty good down payment to do all the financial infrastructure we built with the board approval in the past 5-6 years to start those investments. So more to come, but thank you again for the opportunity to present this to you. And thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
And thank you, Mike and Victor. And thank you to all the directors for the lively discussion on this item. All right, moving on to our last item, is board matters and staff matters. Are there any board matters or staff matters to discuss?
None here in San Rafael, Chair.
All right, none here in Concord. Any via Zoom? Public comment? All right. Well, at this time, I will adjourn the meeting. Sorry. Oh, Director Perkins was saying, yay, if you guys didn't hear him over there. I will adjourn the meeting at 9:03 p.m. Thank you all. Have a good evening. Drive safely. Good night.